Hey everybody, Dave here from District, and I just wanted to chat with you about a really important service that we should be doing on our suspension. So this is just going to be a quick little run through of kind of what a lower service entails. They generally suggest it's done about every 50 hours, depending on the fork manufacturer, but most of them every 50 hours of riding time, of true riding time, is a good recommendation. A lot of people aren't probably going to do it that often, so at least once a season is something that you want to be doing there. When we pop these lowers off, it's going to do a few things for us. It's going to let us add new lubricating oil to the air spring leg. In this particular fork, it's going to allow us to add some more damper oil to this recirculating grip damper in here. It's also going to let us inspect the stanchions for damage. It's going to give us a chance to switch out these seals if needed that are dust wipers and foam rings in there that are designed to keep contaminants out of those lower legs. So really simple service to do, and it is quite easy to do at home as well. We do run clinics throughout the winter, so next winter keep your eyes open if you are interested in learning how to do this yourself. I've taken off kind of just the foot nuts and everything already. I've measured the air pressure in the fork, the compression and rebound settings of where this particular individual has their suspension set up. And then our next steps are just going to be to free these lower legs. It is possible to do this without these special rods from Fox, with just a socket and some care and attention. But it does make it a lot easier if you do have these nice little rods to just ensure, especially on this damper leg, that you don't damage any of these adjusting needles. So that's your rebound adjusting needle there. And so when we pop this open, hopefully we're going to see some oil pour out of the bottom of the lower legs. If it doesn't, then obviously the fork is way too dry and we'd need to be adding oil anyway. And if it does come out, then hopefully it's clean and we can just get some fresh stuff in there. But if it's really dirty, then that'll be a really good example of why we want it to be changed. So once those legs are free, we can pop these lowers off. Now we can see relatively clean damper oil coming out, a little bit dirty, but definitely very low on the oil on the lubricating on the air spring side. All right, so now we have the fork separated here. For the meantime, I'm just going to hang the uppers up here, and now we get to inspect our lowers. As we can see in this particular set of lowers, we have a very, very, very dirty inner foam ring and seal, so we're going to switch those guys out for you to get some new ones in there. That's obviously creating a lot of dirty oil down in the bottom, and these seals are pretty easy to pop out. I have a little bin here that is just filled with some old rags that I use as a nice base plate for my lowers, and then you can just get in there and pry these guys out, and that'll pop out for you fairly simply on both sides. So next up, now we've got those seals and foam rings popped out, I'm just going to make sure I give all of this a really good clean. You can see where there's been dirt and oil and everything's kind of stuck on there. We don't want any of that falling into the new oil or into the fork when we put new seals in there. So I'm just going to break away here for a second and give this a solid scrub. All right, so now that we've kind of cleaned that arch off a little bit there, we're going to actually try to give the inside of these lowers a good scrubbing. Get the old oil out, get any contaminants out, and make sure that the bushings and everything in there are as clean as they can be. To do this part, we do want to use an isopropyl alcohol. We want to make sure that it's something that we can clean off, that's going to eat away at some of that old grease, and that is going to evaporate nice and clean when we're all done, to not leave anything in there. So we're going to give that a good spray. We're going to take our rag. We're going to clean where we can reach by hand, and then for the remainder, we can get this down in there, and we can use a wooden dowel so we don't scratch or damage any of the inner tube, any of the bushings in there, and we can then just move that rag back and forth. Sometimes you'll have to do this 2, 3, 4 times to get out, all of the nasty stuff that's in there. But you can take a look from the rag here, how much dirt and grime and everything is in there. So we'll keep doing that. We'll do that on both legs, and then we'll kind of get ready for seal installation and reassembly. All right, so we've cleaned those lowers. The other really nice thing about doing this lowers kind of 50-hour service is it does give us an opportunity here to inspect the upper stanchions once we clean them, make sure that there's no wearing out the coating, no scratching, anything in there. It also gives us an opportunity to test the damper function. So in this grip damper, it is a semi-recirculating oil damper. So when you are testing it, you can sometimes get a little bit of oil popping out. But basically, I can just test the rod. I can cycle it in its open settings. Feels smooth. Doesn't feel notchy at all. Doesn't feel loose. And I can check the firm setting and just see that it's definitely stiffened up, which is exactly what we want. So that's a good indication that that damper is still working very well, and we don't need to dive further into the service in terms of doing a full damper overhaul. Something else that we like to do here at District whenever we're doing a lower service is to do an air spring service on a fork. So we're just going to disassemble this, clean it all, and then rebuild it. To take off these top caps, you do want to make sure that you have a chamferless socket. There's not a lot of teeth and room to grab on here, so you do want to make sure that you have a really good socket on there to crack these guys loose. And once that top cap comes off, that will make the bottom of the spring easier to remove. This is also where you would add or remove tokens if you were looking to change your progression rate in your fork. And then so to get this bottom guy off here, we just have a retaining ring that we can get out of here. And then we can just remove that air spring, and you can see how filthy that was actually. Very dirty oil, very dirty grease. So we're going to clean that all up and rebuild that. That's also going to help the fork feel significantly better once we get it all put back together. All right, so now that we've got that air spring cleaned, we are going to give that a light, fresh layer of grease with slick oleum. You definitely don't need much. Probably the biggest thing that we see is pretty significant over-greasing of this piston in here. You can add a little bit as well, just a small amount to the shaft, just to help decrease the friction on those sliding rings in there as it's going to move. And once you've got that nice little layer on there, we're going to pop that back into our uppers. Pretty straightforward. We've cleaned our upper tube, pop that in. Once we get that below the ring that retaining ring needs to sit into, we can reinstall that. And then we are going to add just a couple milliliters of float fluid on top of the air piston, just to again help with that stiction, and then we'll be all ready to go to reassemble with the lowers. Okay. All right, everybody, so now we are ready to reinstall some new dust wipers and foam rings to our lowers. We have Fox 20 weight gold here, and I'm using the Fox 5 weight PTFE oil for the damper leg and the air spring leg. First thing that we want to do is just give these foam rings just a light stretch, just to give them a little bit of extra space. They come fairly tight in that package there. And then we are going to make sure that we coat the lower leg for the air spring side. We're going to soak that in the 20 weight. We're going to soak this one in the 5 weight. And I'm just going to give that a little push down into there to make sure that they're getting covered and soaking up all the oil that they can. While those guys are soaking, I'm going to install the dust wipers. Something that I like to do is remove these energizer rings from the dust wipers. I then just grab my uppers that are sitting to the side, and I'm just going to add a quick little dab of grease on the upper tube. We'll wipe that off later, but then I'm just going to store these energizer rings there. That's just make sure A, I don't lose them, and then B, when I'm reinstalling the uppers into the lowers, I'm not pinching or damaging those energizer rings at all. So I'm just making sure that those are going to stay there for me. After that, we're going to grab our lowers. We have our seals that are just going to fit into there. It is going to be a pretty snug and tight fit. We will use this seal press designed exactly for these 36 mil seals, but you can use PVC pipe or anything that you can cut to the right diameter to make sure that you can get a nice even push into these. So once that is installed and ready to be punched down, we can give that a nice light tap, and that's going to set that dust wiper in there nice and flush and perfectly. So we'll just do that on the other side here as well. Once we've installed those, we just want to give them a quick little inspection, make sure that nothing is sitting crooked or cockeyed or anything like that, and that's good. Now we are ready to dig these foam rings out of this oil. Again, we're going to make sure that the oil, the 20 weight ring is going to go into the air spring side, and the 5 weight is going to go into the damper side. So we're going to dig those out, we're going to install them, and then we're going to reinstall these blowers. Those foam rings are going to sit just underneath the dust wiper, so it is important to make sure that you just use your finger there and you just tuck this foam ring underneath that seal, and you want to make sure that it's sitting nice and flat in there with no twists, turns, anything like that. Grab this guy out of here and tuck him in under this side, and again just making sure that that foam ring has no twists, turns, sharp edges to catch. Once those guys are installed, we are ready to slide the upper tubes back in. And so when we grab the upper tube, and we're going to just gently insert those guys there, and this is the area where you can be pinching those Energizer rings if they were sitting around there. So it's nice to have those removed, and we can just gently line those guys up. And then slide that down, and we should feel basically no stiction whatsoever as those slide through there. Once that's happened, we are ready to add oil to the lower leg of the fork. Okay, so we've got those lowers back on. If we install them, push them all the way down, you will see obviously on the damper side this leg pop out, so we don't want that to happen. So you want to hold those lowers off fully bottomed just until we get oil in there. Going to the Fox Bike Help Center will give you the oil volumes that you need in each leg of the fork. We do quite a few of these, and we know for this guy that I'm going to need 40 mils of 5 weight PTFE in the damper side and 10 mils of 20 weight gold in the air spring side. So I've just already moved these into these smaller cylinders. While we're adding it, we want to have the fork at a nice little angle there, and we are just going to add the lubricating oil that we need into this lower leg. Trying not to spill much. You can see that realistically there's not a lot of lubricating oil in that leg, so it is really important that we do this service. It is, really important that that oil stays fresh and stays lubricating that bushing and that tube. And then in our damper leg, we will now add our 5 weight PTFE. And so once that's done, now we can really set those lowers fully down and on so we can expose those foot nuts. The Fox kit will come with new crush washers that we are going to be using on both legs to ensure that we get nice good seals on both of those before we install the foot nuts back on there. So once those foot nuts are back on and tightened down and snugged, at that point we're just going to reset the fork back to its original settings that I've written down, test it, make sure that it's all working well, and then this customer is ready to rock and roll on a fresh fork for the season. So thanks for joining me for a quick little run through on why this 50-hour service is so important, and we hope to see you and your bike in here soon. Have a great day, guys.